Matt Bernie or Dan Illman taking a look back at the Grade 3 Kentucky Turf Cup last Saturday afternoon down at Kentucky Downs, going 1.5 miles, hill, dale, all over the place. You had a big full field as they break from the gate. Immediately, you're going to want to just keep an eye on the number 4. This is Oscar nominated. He works out a beautiful trip underneath Julien Leparoux, and I know he only wins by a head, but I thought he was much the best.
And that's also Oscar nominated. He's never going to blow you away. There are times when he loses these photos. He makes it close, but you could tell he was going to run 5 strides out of the gate. He broke so sharp, and Julien Leparoux's got him in a little bit of a handful now. He's going to take him back off the pace, and right about here, Oscar nominated comes to hand in a very good spot.
On the front end, you have One Go All Go, a horse that had been victorious in the past here at Kentucky Downs, and that's always a feather that you want to have in one of your horse's cap. He's out there at 50-1 though, setting the pace. Just in behind him, you have St. Louis as well as Nessie. St. Louis is actually going to run quite well in this spot.
St. Louis is really the only part of the pace that's punching on at the end, and I guess it is a credit to Michael Maker, who just seemingly dominates this race. He wins it for the 3rd straight year. St. Louis is basically a high-level optional claimer, but he is on the pace throughout. He's going to have the lead at the quarter pole, and he fights on well. He only gets beat about 2.5 for all the marbles.
Keep an eye on the horse that's down in the pocket right now with the blinkers on. That's Postulation, and this is essentially a replica of the trip he worked out in the American St. Ledger most recently at Arlington Park, where he's in just off the pace, working out a good trip, and he's eventually going to make a move on the far turn.
He's one of these horses that's really improved as the distances have increased, and you're absolutely right. He's working out a very sweet trip. He's going to ease out with every chance, and Oscar nominated is just going to have his measure in the stretch, but he fights hard all the way down to the wire.
Oscar nominated is slowly going to start getting the engine cooking beneath Leparoux. You're also going to want to keep an eye on Taser, who's in amongst horses right now. He's going to come on with a legitimate move at the end. But meanwhile, on the front end, One Go All Go at 50-1. He's going to start feeling the effects of this early pace scenario. Meanwhile, St. Louis is going to take over. Zulu Alpha was a bit of a wild card. He looked like he was in striking range. He finishes up the track.
Maybe just a little bit too much too soon for Zulu Alpha. Very lightly raced up on this pace, and he just couldn't keep track with these better horses. St. Louis being very confidently ridden. He's going on for home a bit early. You're going to see Oscar nominated in those very familiar Ramsey silks, though. Gets to the outside. Clear run for him.
We've still got a ways to go coming down the lane. It's one of those situations where at this point you're figuring, well, maybe Postulation, he's just going to make that move, he's going to take over. Meanwhile, here comes Oscar nominated, and he's going to really feature a nice turn of foot.
And right inside of Postulation also is Taser. This is a striking move to split horses just to the outside of St. Louis. He'll flatten out, though, in the last furlong. Oscar nominated, very game. Postulation, very game. And as we see, not a ton of running from the back of the pack. Taglib, too little, too late.
Too little, too late. Oscar nominated, though, gets the job done in the Kentucky Turf Cup, pays $9.40. Postulation, $5 to place. Taser, $4.80 to show. Your $1 exact at $23.40. $1 try, $115.60. Oscar nominated is a horse that we have made mention numerous times with any of these videos that we've done. He is not the kind of horse that is going to blow you away, but it is, you have to respect the fact that he shows up and runs his race more often than not.
Absolutely, and he's been managed very well by Michael Maker. He made a lot of money with this horse, putting him in the right spots last year as a 3-year-old. Now, he had to step up and face some tougher company this year, and while he hadn't been able to get over the hump, he showed that he could be very competitive. Against this field over this course, you knew that Oscar nominated fit. The question is, would he finally be able to get his nose down? And as we see, he did.
98 Beyer speed figure in victory here. The runner-up Postulation also earns a 98 Beyer. He loses nothing in defeat here. I thought he ran quite well. I think it was almost a replica of his American St. Ledger. I think I agree with you. Distance has been the great thing for him.
We'll probably see him in that longer distance race at Keeneland. Maybe it comes back a little bit too soon. I'm not too sure, but I think he fits in those kind of races. And again, it's odd for these, sort of longer-winded horses to have this kind of tactical speed. It's a great advantage.
Taser ran very well also. He earned a 97 Beyer in this spot. I think there are options for him going forward. I don't know that the distance, I know he wasn't embarrassed here, but I wonder if he's better at slightly shorter than 1.5 miles.
I agree. He did flatten out noticeably. I wonder if he has just a very short burst of run. And maybe we saw that when he tried to break this thing open in between horses, when those other horses stayed with him, he flattened out. But his trip was in and among, and sometimes that can be uncomfortable. He was shuffled back a little bit with about a half mile to go. I think the jockey, Joe Bravo, wanted to get outside. He definitely moved to the inside, and everything worked out. There was no traffic issues. I thought it was a good, solid effort, something to build on for Taser. Is he a graded stakes caliber horse? The jury's still out.
Do you upgrade St. Louis' effort because he was the only part of the pace that stuck around, or is that more an indictment on the other pace setters, considering they were 40 and 50-1?
I think it's a combination of both because I think I know St. Louis. And I think that this race was a very good effort. Maker showed a lot of confidence running him here. This is the kind of horse I'd love to see him adopt this sort of strategy going forward in longer distance races. Sort of blast to the top and make them catch you, because as we've seen many, many times, a lot of the jocks, especially when they're longer priced pace setters, they let that horse go, and those horses keep on going. It's a tremendous tactical advantage. St. Louis is in very good form. The problem is, I know St. Louis. I know he's an optional claimer. He doesn't strike me as a graded stakes caliber horse, but all credit to Maker. He got him to run a big one here.
A horse that had been for the longest time in very good form that may now be tailing off a little bit is another Maker entrant in here, and that's Todd Glebe. Now we've got to talk about him, where he tried at the end. He came on a little bit belatedly, but at the same time, this just doesn't seem like the same horse we'd seen down at Gulfstream in January and February.
I think you and I disagree a little bit about his preferred running style. We have seen Todd Glebe now in his last 3 races just drop way out of it early.
Yeah.
Show absolutely no interest, completely sluggish, and he passes a few horses, a few tired horses late in the stretch. This is not, to me, the Todd Glebe that we saw at Gulfstream Park. He was never a burner. He was never a tactician that could sit in the pocket, but he was a horse that would be a mid-pack runner.
Yeah.
There'd be horses behind Todd Glebe early. That has not been the case recently, and I wonder if that is really a sign for an older horse that when you lose your speed, even if it's just tactical speed, that you're going off form.
Do you think the argument could be made that he just really relishes the turf at Gulfstream, because that's where his best races far and away have come?
I think that's a good point. He might really like that firm ground. I also think that there was a lot of racing for Todd Glebe earlier this year, and he's just feeling the effects. I mean, he's not a spring chicken. He's 6 years old. He's danced a lot of dances, but I was stunned that he was so far behind in the early portion of this race, and he came with his usual run, but it was nothing earth-shaking.
It's good to see the horses that are honest, that show up and run their race, and they just go out there, the Warriors. It's nice to see them get one here. Oscar nominated again, Mike Maker, tremendous job training this horse here. He's a 98 buyer winning the Kentucky Turf Cup.